Hey, I need one of those 8 by 2 pieces. No, 8 by 2. 8 dots long and 2 dots wide. Dear Tim and Moby, my sister said that my body is made of cells. Is this true, and just what the heck are cells anyway? From Jenny. Well, your sister was right. You are made of cells.
Yeah.
She's made of cells too. In fact, all living things are made of one or more cells. They're the building blocks of life. If you could look at yourself through a microscope, you could see that you're divided into millions of tiny sections. These sections are called cells. Cells live with other cells like them in groups called tissues. This here is a typical cell. It's basically a blob of jelly-like fluid called cytoplasm, surrounded by a cell membrane. The membrane lets good stuff in and keeps bad stuff out. Floating around in the cytoplasm are organelles. These little guys do all the work that cells need to do, like make proteins, turn food into energy, and get rid of waste. Right, just like the body has organs for different functions, the cell has organelles for its functions. To remove waste, your body has the kidneys and intestines. A cell has lysosomes and peroxisomes. Hey, good question. A cell's brain is its genetic material, DNA and RNA. Genes are like a computer program that controls all of an organism's functions. The genetic material inside each cell coordinates all of its actions. Plants and animals, including people, are made of eukaryotic cells, which means that their genetic material is surrounded by a membrane.
Wait.
Together, the genes and the membrane form an organelle called the nucleus.
Sure.
The other type of cell, prokaryotic, has no nucleus. Genetic information in prokaryotic cells just sort of floats free in the cytoplasm. Most prokaryotes are single-celled bacteria, like Lactobacillus acidophilus, which is used to make yogurt. Nope, not all cells look like these. In any given organism, different cells carry out very specialized functions. As a result, they can look very different. Some types of bone cells are star-shaped. Muscle cells have to be stretchy. Nerve cells can be really long, so they can carry signals from one part of the body to another. This bacteria has little hairs growing out of its membrane to help it move around. Red blood cells are sort of shaped like little bowls.
Some quinoa.
Plant cells have a rigid cell wall that maintains their shape.
Doesn't affect your plans. Yeah.
Inside the human body, cells range from microscopic to over a meter long. You have about 75 trillion cells in your body, enough to stretch around the Earth 47 times. Yeah, I guess that would hurt. Okay, whether they're eukaryotic or prokaryotic, almost all cells have the ability to divide. In eukaryotes, the process is called mitosis. The nucleus splits apart, the cell stretches out, and then separates into two distinct cells. This is how you grow. Hey, cut that out.
The cell theory, the differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, and the differences between animal cells and plant cells. The cell theory has three main parts. All organisms are made of cells. All existing cells are produced by other living cells, and the cell is the most basic unit of life. There were several scientists who contributed to the cell theory. In 1965, Robert Hooke was the first to identify cells, and he named them. In 1674, Anton van Leeuwenhoek was able to observe cells in greater detail with the use of lenses. In 1838, Matthias Schleiden was able to use the compound microscope to study plant tissue. As well, in 1839, Theodor Schwann concluded that all living things were made of cells. And finally, in 1855, Rudolf Virchow proposed that all cells came from other living cells. As people continued to improve the microscope, they were able to study more details of the cells and put together the cell theory. Let's look at the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus or other membrane-bound organelles. Instead, the cell's DNA is suspended in the cytoplasm. All prokaryotes are microscopic single-celled organisms. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. The nucleus, the largest organelle, encloses the genetic material. Eukaryotes may be multicellular or single-celled organisms. Here we have a prokaryotic cell and its features. There is no nuclear membrane surrounding the cell of a prokaryotic cell. There is also no nucleus. Only nuclear material and the nucleoid is present. Well-defined cell organelles like mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, etc. are absent in prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells are found in bacteria and blue-green algae. This is a eukaryotic cell which has a well-defined nucleus. The nuclear membrane and nucleolus are present in a eukaryotic cell. Well-defined cell organelles like mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, etc. are present. Eukaryotic cells are found in most plants and in all animals.
Today we're going to take a look at a three-dimensional model of a typical animal cell and all of its organelles. Before we get started, I want to remind you that this is only a model of a cell and is not necessarily an accurate representation of what you might find under a microscope. Cells are so small, unique, and complex that it is almost impossible to know exactly what each one might look like. Surrounding the outside of the cell is the cell membrane, which is sometimes also referred to as the plasma membrane. This membrane is extremely thin and is usually only about 1/1000th of a millimeter thick. The cell membrane acts as a barrier between the cell and its surrounding environment. The plasma membrane is a semi-permeable membrane, meaning that only certain materials can pass through it. Substances such as food particles and oxygen can pass into the cell through the membrane to be used as a type of fuel for cellular energy. Other substances are transported out of the cell through the membrane, including waste products such as carbon dioxide gas. Inside the plasma membrane is the cellular space known as the cytoplasm, which contains tiny cell structures called organelles. The main and arguably the most important organelle inside the cell is the nucleus, which serves as a type of control or command center for the cell. The nucleus has its own semi-permeable membrane known as the nuclear envelope, which contains pores that allow certain molecules to pass through. Inside the nucleus are structures called chromosomes. Chromosomes are made of DNA and contain the genetic information of the cell. This information serves as a blueprint for the creation of proteins. Proteins are responsible for the physical features of an organism such as skin color, height, and eye color. Proteins are also responsible for traits such as allergies. Also contained inside the nucleus is a structure called the nucleolus. The nucleolus is responsible for the production of ribosomes, which we'll talk more about later. The endoplasmic reticulum, commonly abbreviated ER, is a network of membranous sacs and tubes that serves multiple functions inside the cell. The ER serves as a sort of assembly line where proteins are put together using the genetic blueprints from the chromosomes. It also serves as a sort of highway that allows a transportation network between different organelles in the cell, allowing them to exchange materials. Cells contain what is called a smooth ER and a rough ER. The difference between the two is that the rough ER is studded with ribosomes, while the smooth ER is not. So now that you've heard so much about ribosomes, let's talk about what ribosomes actually are and their role inside the cell. Ribosomes are small molecules that synthesize proteins. They can be found bound to the rough ER or simply floating in the cell's cytoplasmic space. Ribosomes read the genetic information contained in RNA in order to create functional proteins. Mitochondria serve as the powerhouses for the cell because they provide the cell with energy in the form of ATP. Cellular respiration takes place in these organelles. During cellular respiration, oxygen is used to burn particles of food in order to produce ATP. The number of mitochondria in a particular cell varies depending on the activity level of the cells. For example, highly active cells such as muscle cells contain higher amounts of mitochondria than most other cells. Before food can be processed by these mitochondria, these particles need to be processed by organelles called lysosomes. Lysosomes contain digestive enzymes that serve as a type of garbage disposal for the cell. Lysosomes break down older cell products as well as waste materials. These organelles are also responsible for engulfing harmful viruses or bacteria. The Golgi apparatus serves as the cell's packaging center. Here, cell products are synthesized, modified, and sorted into bubble-like containers that break away and move to the plasma membrane, where their contents are released from the cell to the surrounding environment. The centrosome is the organelle that is responsible for the formation of microtubules. Microtubules provide physical support for the cell and help to give the cell its shape. Microtubules also play a crucial role in cell division or mitosis. Peroxisomes are organelles involved in cellular metabolic processes. These structures contain enzymes necessary for breaking down molecules such as long-chain fatty acids, branched fatty acids, and amino acids. Peroxisomes convert long fatty acids into shorter fatty acids, which can then be sent to mitochondria to be used as a type of fuel for the production of ATP.